Still on live.
It's
Right
live.
then, right, we're live.
Woo!
Morten's not here.
Once again.
Come on, Morten.
Theo, um,
I'll try in the background for Morten.
right, just a bit of housekeeping. Bill, can you deal with a Slack for me?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because I've just sent Morten an invite through Slack, and hopefully he's going to be able to come on, right?
Right.
So this is November's WP-Tonic Hangout. We've got a very interesting panel of guests. I'm going to ask everybody to quickly introduce themselves, and we're going to start with our normal one, which is Adam. So Adam, can you introduce yourself and tell the audience a bit what you do?
Sure. I am Adam Silver. I run one of the local Southern California meetups, the South Bay meetup for WordPress. I also have a small business called Silver Lining Productions, and I share freely over at kitchensinkwp.com. And I have a weekly podcast there as well.
That's great. Brian, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Brian Bourn. I'm one of the partners at Bourn. We're a small WordPress agency just outside Sacramento, and we help co-organize the Sacramento WordPress meetup group as well.
Right, that's great. And then David?
Hi, I'm David Laietta. I help organize WordCamp Orlando and Orlando meetup. Our WordCamp is in 2 weeks, so that is what I've been spending forever doing. I also run a WordPress development shop called Orange Blossom Media.
Rightio. And then we got our great guest, John.
Hello, my name is John Locke, and I'm a web developer from Sacramento, and I attend the Sacramento WordPress meetup. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right. And do we have Flynn? Or have we lost Flynn? I think we've lost Flynn. All right. So basically, I want to start this conversation. Basically, I'm not sure we all attended, but I think most of us attended WordCamp in San Francisco. So if you could quickly go, how you think the WordCamp went, and what do you think was some of the most important points of the weekend? And we start with Adam.
Yeah. So WordCamp San Francisco, and I and David are representing with our shirts. It was a good conversation about that before we went live. So I thought WordCamp San Francisco was pretty darn cool. You know, there was I met a lot of new people. Saw some people from the Southern California area. There was a big contingent of SoCal people. You know, and it's interesting. I heard good and bad. Honestly, I'm going to be blunt and honest because that's how I roll. I don't know
that's why you're on the show, Adam.
Exactly. So, you know, I think, and it happens in WordCamps in general, that I tend to focus on a lot of beginners, and that's great to get people involved in the community. And the cost of entry is really low. That said, those people who want more meat and more development or more takeaways sometimes come away frustrated. You know, and but then you got to look at the audience. You got to look at the demographic of where you are and the cost of getting there. $40 is cheap. You're not paying $50. You're not paying $500 or $1,000 for 2 days with food to learn one specific thing. It's a wide swath of information to get going. So that said, I thought some of the flash talks were awesome. I thought some of the flash talks were so-so. I like that concept. I like the flash talk concept. I really do. And other than that, I mean, also the in-between sessions were awesome. Networking, meeting people, that was one of the best takeaways for me.
Yeah, I think you're about right. I think I agree with everything you just said, Adam. I'd like to introduce some more guests. So, shall we start with Morten? Hey, Morten, great to have you.
Morten, you made it.
Yeah.
I did, finally.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Yes, he is. Would you like to introduce yourself, Morten, to the audience, please?
Put on your hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the hat is in another room.
Oh, we're looking.
I gotta know why. First, before you just why could not he get? What was the problem? What was going on?
Oh, he's got the hat.
Oh,
Hey.
now we can start.
Oh, that's that. Yeah, keep it on, will you, Morten?
I'm Morten. I live in Vancouver, and I'm a staff author for Lynda.com. So I do a lot of WordPress education and training. I'm also the one of the lead organizers for the Vancouver WordPress meetup group.
Thank you for joining us, Morten. What about Flynn? Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name's Flynn O'Connor. I also live in Vancouver. Right now, I'm a freelance WordPress developer, and I'm also one of the organizers for the WordPress meetup in Vancouver, and I've also been helping organize the WordCamp for the last 2 years in Vancouver.
Thank you, Flynn. And David, I think we've got two Davids, haven't we?
Yes.
So you'd like to introduce yourself, David?
Which one?
You.
I already introduced myself. The other Florida David.
Yeah, the one that didn't get the invite.
No, you're not going to hold that against me, are you?
Yeah, not yet. I'm David Bisset. I'm a full-time WordPress freelancer in South Florida, USA. I've been organizing WordCamp Miami going on almost 6 years, and I organize some of the local meetups here.
All right then, Dave. Can you might as well. Did you attend WordCamp San Francisco?
Yes, I did.
What was your thoughts about it?
Overall, it was great. I stuck primarily upstairs, and I thought all the presentations were pretty well done. So I don't have any major or moderate gripes about it, really. So I'm boring, but I like it.
Don't strike me as boring. Go on, let's everybody else. The next person that wants to comment about the WordCamp in San Francisco. Who wants to say something next?
I agree with Adam about Flash Talks. I thought some of them could have been better, but then I saw some of them that I was thinking, man, I really would have loved to see that extended for a full talk. But I like the idea that you can get a lot of people, to share their experiences, because not everybody wants to fill up a whole half hour, with something. Maybe their idea only takes 15 minutes, but it's still a really good idea. Sorry.
No, Flash Talks are actually more difficult. I think Flash Talks are more difficult. Talking about something in 5 minutes can be more difficult than talking about something in 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And you're not going to be able to touch the entire audience, especially of a group of that variety or that span, within a 5-minute time. Depending on your subject. Like I said, I was upstairs all the time, so it was primarily development. And most of those talks tend to go toward more of the inspirational than technical, because of just the time limit involved.
It's
So
worth noting that I did one of those talks. That was actually a specific requirement.
which was?
That it was inspirational, not technical.
Oh, it was it?
That
Oh, I
was a
didn't.
specific requirement for all the talks at WordCamp San Francisco.
Well, some of them were more technical than others, but even if you do an inspirational talk, you can't always hit the bullseye on that with everybody.
Well, and some of the inspirationals had takeaways, which were great, and also had the Q&A. If there was time for Q&A, had some of that. Morten's was awesome. I liked his. Actually, I went up and talked to you afterwards. I'm like, hey, I liked your talk.
Yeah, I thought in a balance, I thought it was okay, but I thought there was something missing a little bit on the talks, but I haven't really rationalised what that was really. And of course, I'd like to ask the panel what their reaction was with the news that they're going to move it. It's no longer going to be held in San Francisco. Has any of the panel got any views about that?
We don't know where it's going to be held, so it may still be San Francisco. It won't be held technically at that location because they've outgrown it.
Right.
And then it's wide open. And I heard somebody said Detroit because they're up and coming and whatnot. There's a big tech sector. Who knows? It's going to be called WordCamp US, like WordCamp Europe, and it'll rotate location. So.
David Bisset and I had a nice long chat about this that evening, trying to figure out where we might consider it. And our assumptions were starting in the major cities that had very active international airports, since we want to bring so many other people in. So we're talking about cities like Atlanta, Miami, Chicago, I think Seattle. I believe a couple of cities were ruled out, like most likely New York or DC, since those are ones that have had problems getting venues big enough for them. Same as we have problems affording a venue big enough to keep growing here.
Same with LA. Yeah.
Of course, Houston, go back to Texas to get Texas back. As far as I know, no location has been chosen yet, like even privately.
Right.
What about Boston?
Boston would be cool. I've never been there.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Matt later today. I'll ask him.
All right, that's great.
Well, the other people who make those decisions, they were. I was like, hey, do you guys know what city it's going to be in? And either they're being very secretive or haven't chosen yet.
I think they should consider changing the name to WordCamp North America instead of WordCamp US.
Maybe there'll be one.
Europe is called WordCamp Europe for a reason. Like the US is great, but if you call it WordCamp US, there is first of all an assumption that there might be something else like a WordCamp Canada, which is not going to happen. And the second part is it also unintentionally excludes a large group of WordPress users, because then it sounds like something that's about the United States.
Can I ask something?
Another reason why you might want to consider hosting in Canada instead, and that is there are people in the world who, for various reasons, can't enter the United States to go to conferences, but they can usually enter Canada to go to conferences due to U.S. immigration policies and other weird things that are worth thinking about. So I would like to see it be WordCamp North America with like 80 or 90% of events happening in the U.S., but also the opportunity for Canadian large cities like Toronto and Vancouver to apply for it and then have something happen here as well.
Can I ask something, Morten? You just said that you didn't think there's the possibility of a WordCamp Canada. Why is that?
I think if you organize the WordCamp Canada and a WordCamp US, the sheer size of WordCamp US would render WordCamp Canada an insignificant event for all the sponsors and speakers who would want to come. So WordCamp US would basically draw all the money away from any large Canadian event. It's
That would
just
be-
proximity. That happens all the time. So it's not just about the WordPress community, that's in general. If you have the same event happening in the United States and Canada, then Canada just gets written off by all the sponsors as insignificant.
I think if you have WordPress North America, you're going to exclude a lot of people from Mexico and Latin America unless you have bilingual tracks. I think it would be better to do WordPress US and WordPress Canada and then WordPress Latin America. And that way the attendees would get more out of it just because of the language.
All right. I think we've covered that. I want to ask the panel a question. It was linked, obviously, when Matt invited questions, Morten and myself both asked a question, but I think they're both linked. And what I would like to ask the panel, I asked Matt why Automatic don't run a commercial marketplace themselves. And I personally feel that this is something Automatic should do. They should run their own commercial theme and plugin marketplace and pursue the highest standards possible in that marketplace around usability and disabled usability of themes and plugins. And Matt basically said to me, he gave a very polite answer, but basically he said they weren't. He didn't really want to go down that path. I just would like to ask the panel, do they think this is something that Automatic should reconsider, and do they think it would benefit the WordPress community if they did run a marketplace? And go on, who wants to be the first to go into that?
I want to hear Brian's take on this.
Go on, Brian.
Remember that you have premium products, WordPress and WordPress and VIP, so they are running. You have a running script with developers.
Hey Brian, unfortunately I think your connection isn't good enough. Do you think you could try and reconnect?
No, it's just his mic settings. With the settings,
It's just his
your mic is
and
making a lot of
mic
noise.
will work better.
Yeah, it's your mic settings then. All right, can we? Obviously, he wants to look at his mic settings. Can somebody else come in?
I would like to say that I don't think that they should actually get into the official theme or plugin marketplace, because as of right now, I don't think they have enough people to actually guarantee a level of quality across the board that would be adequate enough to provide something for the community. I think it's a lot of work in order to audit the code and keep everything in check, and I don't think that Automatic has enough people to handle that. I think they should support people that are willing to do that, but I don't know if it's something that necessarily Automatic should or in the future try to take on.
Plus, it may not be even in their DNA. There's, a lot of people ask Apple, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? And, it just may not be something that they really have their heart into. So I kind of trust Matt's, if anybody's going to know what Automatic is really moving forward towards, it would be Matt.
Yeah.
So if he says something that it's not, and it may also, also think about once they put their foot in that pond, it's difficult to remove it. You become more prone to criticism, and you're more prone to other things that may not be as productive, and that could be part of the reason why they would be hesitant to step. I wouldn't want to step in that. So
I agree, David. I think you're right. I mean, really, it's like when Apple opened up the stores. They started competing against themselves a little bit online per se, but also they competed a lot with their own resellers. And a lot of those guys are gone now. It's unfortunate. I think let WordPress do what they do best, work on core and some of the other offshoot functions, Automatic on the WordPress.com side, Jetpack. I think that's the place where they need to focus. And that same thing, they don't have the scale, they don't have the size of support yet. You never know. It could change in 5 or 10 years, but for right now, I don't see the need at all. I mean, you have 34,000 plugins. You have 2,600 themes. I think we got plenty without WordPress diving into a marketplace.
Yeah, if Automatic gets the 2,000 people that they want to hire, then maybe it could become a potential.
Right.
But not right now.
I think that not having, I agree that I don't think it's probably the best way for them to go right now, but I think not having enough people's probably not a really, in my mind, not the most valid opinion. They have close to 300 employees, and your average theme shop and plugin shop may have 3 employees. Mostly are one person handling all these things, and they already have all the infrastructure in place. They already have everything down pat. They already build themes and plugins that are released to millions of people. They already handle support for millions of customers. Like, they already have the scale to handle all of these things. I agree it might not be the best place for them to go, but I also don't see it that hard if Automatic said, we want to open up our own theme shop, to just put up a job posting and open the theme shop in a month. Granted, they'd probably take longer to, make sure everything's awesome, but...
Are we talking about the Automatic runs WordPress.com? And
right, which is
WordPress.com
also...
has their own process for adding themes. Basically, if they pick whatever themes they want, then they rewrite them to work in WordPress.com. So if we're talking about opening WordPress.com for premium themes, that's a colossal process on Automatic's end, because they would then have to retrofit whatever themes got sent in, which is probably why they don't do it. Now, if we're talking about Automatic opening an actual theme foundry so that you can submit themes in, I think that goes against the mandate and principle of what Automatic's trying to do. Like, it doesn't help them as a business, and it also kind of starts competing with the WordPress theme directory, which currently also has premium themes listed.
Right, they already have a theme foundry.
So I don't think there's, from Automatic's perspective, I doubt there's any business reason for it, and from a philosophy perspective, I think it goes against what they're trying to do.
Absolutely, there's more reason not to, just as being custodians and not alienating your individual and independent theme developers and plugin developers. It's like taking responsibility as the biggest player in WordPress currently. I've talked to other companies with large numbers of employees, and they purposely don't go into certain verticals just because they feel a responsibility to the community not to compete with a 1- and 2-person shop that's making their living, and they don't need that revenue stream. So there's a lot of sides to it I think are important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I don't think I clarified myself. I think if Automatic entered the market directly producing themes, I think that would be damaging. But I really personally can't see what the problem, apart from a resource question, which might be totally correct. I think actually managing a marketplace that really has high standards, where consumers know that that quality of code and quality of support are some of the most premier elements of this marketplace, in the long term can only help the WordPress community. But it's just my opinion. But I think the present moment is a bit too much of a Wild West, and I think there are economical pressures that are pushing forwards, not pressures pulling it the other way. But that's just my personal opinion. Anybody wants to answer that? Go on, have a go at it. Go on, Adam. Go on, have a go at me. Go on.
I did. I mean, I honestly, I don't think it's a place for them to go at the moment.
Okay.
It's.
Okay. Right, so I think we move on. So I would like to ask the panel what they think are some of the things that they think could be really exciting that could happen in 2015 in the WordPress community. Are there any kind of predictions about that they've heard of that might be something of great interest? And who wants to start? What about you, John? Have you heard anything, or do you think something's coming up?
I think them integrating the JSON API into Core, I think is going to do a lot, because people won't have to rely on XML RPC anymore. The other thing that I think is really exciting, as Matt stated in the State of the Word, is that 2014 we saw non-English downloads exceed English downloads, and I think you're going to see WordPress become more of a global entity, and I think that's where their growth is really going to be in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and that's, I think, part of the reason why I think that their international vision, I think, also ties into the WordCamps as well. Matt mentioned there could be WordCamp Asia, WordCamp Africa, and all of these other things. So you start to get the plugins, you start to get these things in other languages, you start to rip up that interest, and like I said, these individual WordCamps are going to they may have their own contributors, they may have their own teams, really. They're not everybody from the U.S. is going to jet all around the world to these major conferences, or at least most of them. So I think it clearly was a biggest goal from them in terms of just, there's going to be more people non-English speaking outnumbering all the WordPress speakers. That hasn't been done so already. If all goes according to plan from what I see, it'll happen very soon.
I think we tend to think of web development in general as a bit of an American and European and Asian activity, but there's a lot of developers in other parts of the world that we don't consider so much. And I think even at WordCamp San Francisco, Paul Clark talked about that even in places like Burma, there's people that rely on the technology and that develop, even if they're just starting out. I know there's a lot of development schools in Africa that are doing a lot to empower people, and that fits in with the WordPress mission, which is to democratize publishing. But part of that is empowering people by giving them the tools that they need to do that. And I think that's what we're going to see in the next year or two.
Totally agreed. I mean, honestly, I remember 3 years ago, WordCamp Orange County, someone spoke about a newspaper and how then one of them went off to a third world country, I don't remember which one, and how they used it to, they taught people how to use it, in essence, to document their plight and their medical, and they use a whole back end, and they customize it, but it was amazing, and just, us 10, or how many people are on right now, we get caught up in the business of it, the development of it, making some money with it. But we forget that, and I forgot, it's democratizing publishing. It's that aspect of there's so much more important things to be done on the people on the outside versus what we do behind the scenes. I mean, not to say that we aren't important, but there's just bigger issues in the world than me trying to find a new client. Simple as that.
There's always been some pent-up demand.
What was that, Rand?
Go on, Morten.
Well, I was going to say that one of the interesting things that are going to come out of this internationalization debate is what theme and plugin developers are focusing on, because the needs of the extremely high living standard North America and Western Europe are dramatically different from the needs of the rest of the world. And right now, the majority of theme developers and plugin developers are focusing on that extremely high-end need, business needs, things that rely on broadband internet and fancy new computers and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And more and more, we're going to see people who are asking for themes that are extremely light and backwards compatible and accessible and all these things that are not being focused on right now because the user base of WordPress is changing. WordPress is extremely opinionated towards Western civilization in everything. And it's going to be interesting to see if a lot of people from other cultures come in and start contributing to WordPress, if that starts changing the nature of WordPress itself, which would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it would be. So what about the API? I'd like, let's ask Flynn. So the API should be coming out, well, it's been out, but it's going to be even more present in 2.05. So what do you think, how do you think this is going to affect WordPress development and improve the situation?
I've heard some rumblings about there being more of a move towards a lot more front-end editing functionality being brought up in the future. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be completely related to the REST API, but I think it's going to definitely help in some regards. I also like the fact that with this REST API, they actually, a lot of people were saying it was definitely going to be in 4.1. It's going to be coming out in December. Excited, but then I'm really happy that they looked at it and said, no, we're going to wait and we're going to continue to develop this and make sure that it makes sense before we roll it into core. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, there's actually going to be a front-end editor in WordPress 4.1 so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. David, are there any other areas where you think it's really going to help development?
Me, David?
Yes, you.
What?
David Bisset.
Yeah, just call me Bisset. You mean the API?
Yeah, how do you think it will, when it comes out and starts to be utilised during 2015 in a much more active way, how do you feel it will, what ways will it be used to broaden the amount of applications and just things that WordPress is being used for?
Ooh, when I think of it, the first two things that pop into my head are possible mobile applications, and also creating new WordPress admins. Although I'm not sure how big of a market that is right now, but I know Matt mentioned that at the State of the Word. I'm not sure.
I'm all set for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm gonna learn.
Yeah, it's a careful thing because honestly, the thought of multiple WordPress admins once it gets to a certain size is actually a little scary to me. But I can see in specific applications where you maybe are using it. I've built WordPress applications with BuddyPress and other that before, where WordPress is just serving as a front-end tool that has to interact with other inventory systems and that sort of thing. So having the API would help bridge that into kind of creating your own, master admin interface. So that would be applications. And like I said, the mobile applications as well. The API is still. It's still going to be early on when it comes to 4.1. You won't be able to do everything with it, but getting the basics down would probably also serve mobile applications. But the possibilities are endless. There's going to be things that we're not thinking of right now they're going to be people are going to play with in 6 months.
Now tell us all. Tell us right now. Tell me what you're thinking.
Thing for WordPress and our neural implants, pretty much we need to have WordPress is going to start getting into wearables, so we're going to have the WordPress watch, WordPress glasses.
I'm wearing WordPress shorts. You just can't see it. I'm saying whatever.
All my
You
children
buy that right now.
All my children are custom post tags.
Nice.
Right, that's great. What about Brian? What do you think?
I can give you a real-world example of a project that we're in just nearly final sales of. It's an online web app that is built, I forget the language, but it's obviously not WordPress, and they needed a solution to create their documentation, help, and support system, which is currently a nightmare for the marketing people to manage, and we were proposing WordPress installed, and then using the new JSON API to pull in their latest news and ports into their front page using the templating engine, and working with their development team who has no idea how WordPress even works. But as soon as I said JSON, they said, oh, I know how to do that. I can handle it right now. So the main legacy site and the technical debt doesn't become an issue. And there's a company like myself to go ahead and create a WordPress solution that is easy for the marketing department to use. And if that wasn't available next year, would have never got the project. And that's a very simple use case for it. But it does open the doors for projects that have been around and site owners that cannot move away from WordPress. They still must use what they have moving forward.
Oh, that's great. What about you, Morten? How do you think the API is going to affect what happens in 2015?
I think the important thing that is happening with the API is that one of the great values of WordPress is that it makes it easy for an administrator to communicate with a database and then the database spitting the content back. The problem is it's now currently confined to the templating structure of WordPress and PHP. With the API, it means that a site developer or anyone can use WordPress and leverage the great user experience for the administrator, and then at the same time control completely what comes out on the other end and hook it into anything else. You can hook it into a Rails app if you want to, because it's just sitting there. So it allows us to retain the ease of use that has made WordPress popular, while at the same time moving away from making themes and plugins, basically, which is going to be extremely powerful. And there are a lot of companies that are sitting outside the WordPress community who have already been doing this for a long time, who are using their own proprietary APIs. And they're all sitting there itching and waiting for WordPress to actually ship with a proper API so that they don't have to rely on their own system, but can actually start commercializing their products. So I think there's a good chance that we'll see, once the API gets rolled out and is fully built out, that all of a sudden we'll have a new group of developers who are coming in from a completely different place that we haven't seen before, and start adding products into the WordPress marketplace that will be interesting and different from what we're doing right now. And it might become a challenge for some WordPress developers because it's going to be something completely different. And I'm saying it because I've seen it, and it's truly not in any way what you would expect it to be.
Well, right. I'll wait for that. Right. We had a very extensive interview with Morten on Wednesday, and we're very passionate about what's that? Oh, Bill, where's Bill gone? All right, I'll continue. Basically, all right, he's back. We had quite a detailed conversation about education and about how, in some ways, it has really a lot of students that are going through the kind of university system come out and they're not very prepared for the development design world, really, and the difficulties of effective training. And I'd just like to ask the panel what their views with dealing with younger people that are coming in to the world, the development world, the design world, and how training could be improved. Could I start with Bourn? Brian, what's your experiences of how universities and other education establishments deal with getting people ready to enter the working environment, and how do you think that could improve?
So, academia's core philosophy is not job training. It's to create a way of thinking. It's to create, critical reading. It's a philosophical difference of what, as an employer who was looking for someone that can come in and start working out of the gate. But I've interviewed dozens of designers out of college, and they're years away from being able to enter a workplace. They have the basic theory, but in practice, in an agency environment, they have a project they need to get done in 8 hours, but in college it took them a whole semester. There's a huge disconnect, but that's just because of the philosophical difference of most universities. There's no way that they can possibly keep up with the pace of technology and the trends, because especially on an accredited university like a public one, all the curriculum has to be vetted and approved, and that process takes years. So they can't possibly keep up, and they have to do it more the old school way that's been around. So it does create a very problematic situation for small companies to find young, prepared individuals to come in and start working. Otherwise, they're stuck on their own, and they're figuring out, how do I get the experience to go work somewhere if very few places have an entry-level job training program to come in, be productive after 2 to 3 weeks of orientation, and be able to move up a ladder. And most organizations just simply aren't big enough for that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct, Brian, and I think it's a major problem. I think it's not something that's effectively discussed and solutions found. Could I ask both the Davids, and we I don't know which one we'll use. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts about? Yeah, you start.
I'll start because I actually teach at a college. I teach programming courses, and it's true we don't teach how to WordPress, but we teach courses such as client-side and server-side development, so mainly JavaScript and PHP. Actually, I have HTML down, and we can tie it into what we're doing. Like, I tie a lot of my classes into WordPress because that's what I spend all my day doing anyway. But one of the ways that we try to get students to really connect with the material is have them working with existing frameworks, existing projects to see how other people do it, and then part of their requirements for the I have to clarify, this is an accredited, mainly associate's degree, but there's some bachelor's at the school. We get them to go into meetups, into events, make sure they go out in the community. That's part of their curriculum, part of their thing they have to do for their capstone is they need to be involved in community events. In the classroom, they can learn all the technical skill that isn't going to apply when they get out into the real world. So much as knowing how to deal with people, how to deal with clients, how to look for those jobs beyond just sending out resumes. I definitely see schools like we have an Iron Yard Academy here in Orlando, and I know they're mainly the southeast right now, but they'll be growing. And their focus is on getting people straight into the workplace, but they go about it in a much different route than your average college will. And one, there's fewer of them for people to go to, and two, a lot of people don't see the idea that, you need to get a bachelor's degree, otherwise that's as bad as not even having a diploma, still applies for a lot of people.
Who's next? The other David. Come on, David. What do you think about how a young person leaves college and then they're supposed to try and get a job, and how do you think this could improve?
You're talking. This is going to be short because I'm not sure if I got enough background on this. To be honest with you, when I got out of high school in the mid '90s, I didn't even go to college. I self-taught myself the whole way. These days, with rare exceptions, from what I've seen, they're getting out of college does not really prepare if you want to become a developer. There has to be an extra step. So. And even because there's a lot of things change so rapidly that college moves at a very slow pace. College curriculums move at an extremely slow pace. My wife, if it's anything like high school curriculums, which my wife is a teacher of, it's by the time they finally manage to get the curriculum and the teachers in place for something, that technology is probably outdated, or the information about it is outdated. And you could pick certain classes. I mean, believe it or not, Java is still relevant today. So they're even teaching Java in high schools we're down here where I am. And there's going to be a lot of other people that have more experience than me. So the bottom line would be that you're going to have to get some further education, and either that's going to be learning yourself, which a lot of people may not have the time, or it's going to have to be these intermediary, I don't even know if that's a word, there's these in between, like the Iron Yard and Code Academy and these other sites that have wanted people get up to speed on. Now, WordPress specific, I don't even have an answer on, except for the fact that if you want to do something local in your community to facilitate that, I think there could be something that could tie, if you have enough support, tie it into the meetups. And now I know that sounds like trying to put a square peg in a round hole, but there are at least you could in your local community be able to probably jumpstart something, or people get accumulated or point people in the right direction. Obviously, you're not going to start a college, with your local meetup, but it's still, that's the best experience that I can come up with. But I still think it's going to be meetups can be very educational. So if you have the right number of people and you want to start off, and it could be, I would love to see certain meetups have these more along get out of the formats of, hey, we've got 2 topics to talk about every month, versus more of some sort of progressive curriculum, and maybe that's something that you charge for. Maybe that's something separate from a meetup. But if there's a need in your area, that could be a possibility. But like I said, I have my college and higher level educational experience is lacking, so I'll let someone else with the experience.
No, David, I think you brought up some really interesting ideas, actually. I think your last part of your statement is interesting, and I think, it was really interesting. I will think about what you just said.
Yeah, I'm the last guy to talk about these things. I know other people have done education classes in this panel, though. So
those. Go on.
I would say those of us on on Foundation meetup accounts have obviously different rules that we follow from those who run their own meetups in terms of charging for events, doing things like that. And if it might be wrong promoting private events, because it'd be hard for me to start a school, to train people without in some way charging them to pay for the people to be there to actually do the teaching, get locations, all that stuff that goes into it. But I think that the meetups could be a great place to start seeding the talent for those types of schools or for those types of lectures, even if it's separate to that meetup. We have a lot of members in our meetup, and they come specifically because they know this is where they can find WordPress info. So I can't think of a better place for me to start saying, hey, we have a really great predefined curriculum for WordPress that we, can teach you, get you up to speed, whatever, promises we make.
Great, Dave. What about you, Adam? What's your experience?
Okay, so I'm chomping at the bit here. So
I could see Adam.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I teach a WordPress 101 class at the local adult school, and the reason being is because 5 years ago, I redid my own site as a photographer, and I did it in WordPress, and I used my framework, and that doesn't matter, okay, whatever I use. And people kept asking me about WordPress, and I did little sites for some other parents, and I have 3 kids and whatnot. And then people said, hey, do you teach? Do you train? And I used to be a consultant, an Apple consultant, and an Apple trainer. I'm like, I'd have that skill set, etc. And then I finally pitched a class to the local adult school, and that's huge for me. It's been a great place to, it's inexpensive. I get paid by the hour. I'm technically an educator, so I have ID. I get discounts on Amazon, by the way. And it goes both ways. I also meet up because of location and community. And WordPress community is awesome. Southern California has a huge one. We have like 10 meetups, in the general area. But the concept of paying for a meetup to charge for it in the WordPress, hi Bill, I can see you. To pay for an actual meetup has always been looked bad upon in the Southern Cal. Even Chris Lemma talked about it recently. If you're running a meetup for WordPress, to charge versus a donation because of space or food or sponsorship, it's different. I don't make any money at it. Where we hold ours, I take donations to cover some pizza unless we get a sponsor. And then the rest of the money goes back to the nonprofit where we hold it. It's a learning center for children with disabilities called Michael's Learning Place.
Oh, right.
The South Bay Adult School where I teach is awesome. I mean, people come because they want the accountability of paying it's $74 for 5 weeks to get access to me. And while they have access to me, they cannot hire me. So it's a great deal for them. I mean, and I'm going to brag. I'm a resource. I want to be the resource in my area. I'm not all-knowing. I know more than them. And WordPress is extremely deep. 5 weeks, 2 hour week, so it's 10 hours. It's hard to go. I don't teach them everything. I get really close. No, I mean, it's impossible to teach them everything. But I think it's the fact that they could go out and learn on their own, and they could go online. A lot of people don't learn that way. We now know there's different ways of learning. There's online, there's in person, there's book study, and something works for everybody. And then they come from my meetup. I mean, they go either from my meetup to my class or from my class to my meetup, and it's great. It's a great balance there. And final comment is, at a free meetup, there's always 1 or 2 people, and across the country and the world, I'm sure, who expect to get a custom-developed site for $5 for a pizza, and that's not the right place for it.
Right. I think what you've outlined is great, Adam, but what I was talking, and I'm going to ask Morten after I made this quick statement, is that you get a young person and they want to do the best and they enter a 3-year, 4-year educational course. And when they leave that course, that could cost them a fair bit of money. They leave it and they cannot, they're not up, like what Brian said, they're just not up to doing the job.
So there are schools
they've been specifically, they haven't been told, but they've read all the brochures, they've seen the university, they've been given the propaganda, and when they come out, they can't do the job. So
So in answer to that, then the answer is 4-year school is great for the overall mindset of learning and process and the experience of all that. So become a developer in any side, front end or back end. It's a whole separate ball of wax. There's this place here in LA, I can't think of the name of it, and they do a 10-week program, and it's not cheap. It's an additional like $7,000 or $12,000. It's every day, intensive, and at the end of that, I think you're prepared to really dive in. Not prepared to deal with clients, but prepared to be a developer, sure. But a 4-year college degree these days, I don't know. I mean, I don't think
it depends on what kind of college you go to.
Right.
I think that's really important to understand here, that there are colleges and universities and polytechnics that are changing the way they approach education specifically to address this issue. I mean, Flynn has been teaching a professional level web design course, or at least been part of it, that has addressed that. So I'm just going to throw it to him instead.
Nice.
Yeah, cool then, Flynn.
Yeah, so BCIT has a really nice program that is about, what do they say, it's about a 20-week program, full-time, and they go through everything. They start with the basics of HTML, PHP, CSS, JavaScript, and the end of the program is actually them dealing with a local business looking to create a website. And so they have the students join into teams of 4 of them, work with a local business and build out their site, do exploration, do the appropriate things you're supposed to do as a professional. And my part in that was to kind of help them understand how they can use WordPress to generate these sites for them. I mean, they were teaching Drupal as well as WordPress. I think recently they just changed it, and instead of teaching Drupal, because a lot of students were always going to WordPress, they instead decided to focus on WordPress and then talk a little bit about e-commerce and how you can achieve e-commerce. And what's interesting, David Bisset totally hit it bang on when he talks about the kind of inertia of... The inertia of bureaucracy in education is challenging, and in a lot of the programs at BCIT, they can sometimes be a couple years behind the curve. And this program did it kind of a unique way where they were basically almost their own business within BCIT and were able to then have much more control over the curriculum and change it on a semester-by-semester basis to keep up with technology. And I think it was one of the real benefits of that program.
That sounds fantastic, Flynn. I actually got a slightly different view to a lot of the panel. I think the cores of good web design and the cores of good development haven't changed that dramatically. I actually think PHP has been around quite a while in web terms, and I think good CSS practices and good design practices will always be the same. I think fundamentally there's something wrong with the educational process, not only in Canada, North America, but in the UK. And I think in a society that is getting more technically based, more areas where certain skills are necessary, I really do feel that there's been a bit of a cop-out, and it's more to do with structural inability to think out of the box, to really identify a problem. If you have a problem in your business or in your life, the first step for changing that is to identify it. If you're not aware of it, or you just push it to the back, it won't be dealt with. And I personally think that is the fundamental problem of this. When people say, I think the fundamentals, apart from mobile over the past 4 years, I think the basic principles of web design and development have kept the same. But I just don't think the education establishments, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are not being prepared to adapt to the reality. I asked Morten, what was your response to that statement?
I actually don't remember, but I think I can go back to it. I think there's two parts to this. One is that academic institutions, they have it depends on what kind of academic institution you're talking about. Either you're talking about a polytechnic or college or anything that is very job oriented, or you're talking about an academic institution like university, who's very theory oriented, and they have completely different mandates. So a university, you are actually looking to be an academic, not a practical practitioner of anything. And in many respects, there are a lot of components to web design and development that are academic, not practical.
Yeah.
What I think is important in this conversation is you often see people say that going to an institution is a waste of money because they're not really preparing you for what you need to do. One thing that is equally bad is not getting an education in what you're doing, because web design is a profession in the same way that plumbing or being a lawyer or a doctor is a profession. And there are a lot of things that if you're going to deliver a professional service, the client is expecting you to have a level of competency that isn't necessarily there if you've trained yourself. And that's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's simply because your lack of exposure to the entire space and your lack of exposure to all the components that go together to make web design and web development a total. It means you don't even know you don't know it. And a large part of being a professional is knowing what you don't know. And much of that comes from going to some sort of educational institution and getting exposure to everything that's happening. And yes, you can get that in a work environment, but in a work environment, it's usually in the form of, why didn't you do this? And how is it that you don't know how to do this? Rather than, in an educational institution where you would be exposed to, in web design, we have these 800 different pieces that go together to make something. We're going to focus on these 4, but you need to know all these other pieces here. So what I like to say is, if you're going to work as a web designer or a developer in any kind of agency, you need to have done some sort of academic rotation. Just like doctors do when they start out. They go and work for 2 weeks in every single position, not to learn every position, but to learn the language of the people that work in those positions and also be exposed to what they do. So when you come into a project, you can identify which components belong in which category, and you can say, this is an information architecture question, this is a UX question, this is a content strategy question, and hand them off to the right people. And that kind of understanding does not come from sitting at home and working on your own projects. That comes from working in large groups.
I see your point of view. I take it. I'd just like a broad question, and then we can wrap it. I think we've had a good panel discussion here. I would like to ask the panel, what do they see in 2015 could be the dangers for WordPress? Where, we quickly talk about the opportunities, but do they see any kind of problems in the next year or the next 18 months? And I'd like to ask Brian that. Are there some things that concern you?
At a 1,000-foot view, absolutely not. One thing to always remember when you're, pretty much the biggest open source project in the web and number one is getting comfortable being number one and letting your edge slip. But I think what we saw at San Francisco, WordCamp just a little bit ago, that there, as an 11-year-old project, that edge is still there. That drive to make WordPress accessible to all users around the world and that focus on internationalization and extending to everyone shows that the drive and the support is still there and to maintain that edge at number one. So I don't see threats as long as the community who supports it. You start seeing companies start adopting Matt's Challenge 5 for the future. Every day somebody's making a post about it that they're stepping up to the challenge. So I don't see anything as long as everyone continues to support it like they have for the last 11 years and push it for the next 20.
Great answer. What about you, John? What do you think?
I agree with Brian. I don't really see any dangers in the next 12 to 18 months, at least not in a broad sense. I think at one point WordPress was a target for security holes, but I think in recent years, like a lot of those have been addressed, and there's been a lot more awareness in the community, and there's a lot of really well-established security solutions, and a lot of people are doing more best practices. I think as far as WordPress as a security target, I think you're only going to see that more with smaller sites that maybe aren't maintained by either the clients or the developers who built them. But I don't see those as being big targets unless they're trying to build like a robot army of sites that go out and attack like larger sites. But aside from that, I mean, WordPress itself, I think it's stepping in all the right directions, and they're addressing things on the horizon, and I think they're going to continue to have that sharp edge.
Well, how about you, Flynn? What do you think?
I don't think there's like any real terrible dangers, but one thing that I'm seeing a lot more of that's kind of good but could have bad repercussions in the future is I'm seeing some really amazing and creative revisionings of the WordPress admin area, which has been really nice. But I'm a little bit concerned that we might get a bit too far left of field and start to create so many different ways of doing the WordPress admin that we lose some of the familiarity. That's one of the key benefits of using the WordPress admin, is that people know how to use it. We can definitely improve it, but I wouldn't want to see people doing too many different iterations of the admin to try and improve it without maintaining a consistent kind of standing operating procedure with it.
That's very interesting, Flynn. I've had some thoughts about that myself as well, but that was an interesting point. I'm sorry, I'm going to say the two Davids like the two Ronnies, a bit of you, but I try and be polite.
That's okay. It's my turn.
Go on, David, you go first. You're up. So, what do you?
I'm not sure if you classify it as a danger, but I do think it's an improvement that we definitely need to work on. Is our interaction with other communities, especially the PHP community in general. There was a comment made, and I've seen this firsthand. There's still a perception today that WordPress is not taken seriously. Although it manages 20% of the web, there are some people that do not take it seriously. And, some people won't, and that's fine. But I'm talking about within the PHP community. There was somebody help me out. I forget her name. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. I should know this.
I thought you were going to say a comment that I made, because I made a comment in San Francisco.
She's from Europe. She attended the PHP conference, and she mentioned WordPress. What's that?
Jenny Wong.
Yes. Oh my God.
Oh yes.
I don't know why. I don't know why I forgot that. But anyway, the point is that I think she mentioned it, and the result was not positive. And if that conference, I'll have to find the tweet because I do not want to misquote anything. But basically, the bottom line is they did not. She was at a PHP conference, and I think of one of the big ones. And basically, when she wanted to talk about WordPress, I found out about WordPress. It was pretty much they kind of, oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice. Type of that mentality. But not even beyond that example, though. I've seen this and heard of this in other places, primarily within our sphere, so within the PHP world. And I think it's important that we get the PHP community and other relevant communities, like we should form more closer ties with them. For a variety of reasons that we don't have time to go into, but one of those would just be, at least the PHP community, we should be interacting with them on a more basic level. Everything from the meetups, from beyond, we should be going to other, we should try to participate in other conferences. WordPress is not an island, and that I fear, and the possible danger is if it continues to be that kind of an island and separate from the larger community, then we are going to be, that's not as healthy for the community, really. So I think that's something that maybe it's not a danger, but something we definitely need to improve on. We talked about a lot of different ways at the summit that could be done. We could go, other people can be ambassadors to go to other locations or other conferences. We can invite local, even if on the local level, we run a meetup, find that PHP user group, reach out to them, which is what we're doing right now. I'm going to be going to a PHP conference, a Sunshine PHP conference in Miami next February. I mean, try to, at least be present at these things. Try to get involved, because otherwise, WordPress, like what somebody said, WordPress is big, but if we start treating ourselves like the 800-pound gorilla and everyone else is a banana, then that's not a good sign.
And also don't make fun of it. I mean, I'm guilty of literally snickering at friends or other people, and people say Wix or Weebly or whatever, and I actually went like, oh, I'm sorry, just like a couple of months ago, and I've honestly apologized to those people after the fact, because I realized that reason. We get so focused on what we do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. One more. I forgot about this. Sorry, Adam.
No, it's okay, Dave.
Okay, no. WordCamps especially, we personally invite Drupal and Joomla users to WordCamps. We will give them free tickets if we have the motivation. It's not just, there are different, like I said, there's different levels of communities. It's kind of like an onion, right? So I think we should be doing more, and in this all, we snicker when somebody says, oh, I do Drupal, which is fine. On a competitive level, that's fine. It's kind of like I like the Bills or I like the Dolphins football.
I need to jump in a minute.
Niners.
But we still like the game, right? And we shouldn't try to alienate, and we spend so much time trying to get people into WordPress and trying to get people associated with this and trying to get them on board and showing them how to do this, that we don't want to be, we don't want to turn our back on other it's all about open source in the end to me. So anyway, I'm done.
Right, that's great. What about the other David? Good.
I have a lot of things to say in response to both Bisset and Adam. So first of all, let's see if I can think about where to jump in. I think that it's getting better. I was at an open source conference earlier this year representing WordPress, since it happened to be a local one, and man, people in other communities, even other open source communities, a lot of them really don't respect us much. And I think to a point we deserve some respect, but to a point we also, we don't deserve just to get it because we're here. We need to earn that. I think it's getting better. I mean, last year at PHP World, Mason was the keynote, and we're even bridging the other way. Matt keynoting Drupal convention this year. We try to, as I said, invite people from the other local communities to our events and to our WordCamps with big success around here. But our local Drupal community leader is trying to work with us to work on that. Anyway, my take on WordPress threats for 2015, relating back to this, is we're a large enough community. We've hit this critical mass. Probably a few years ago, we hit this critical mass where anything that's happening in the outside of WordPress world is in some way going to drip down into us, just because whoever's doing that is in some way related to us. By that I mean we have some great security consultants. So security issues are going to get solved in WordPress. We have people all over the world using it. So any problems with internationalization, they're going to in some way be solved. Maybe it's not going to be pretty at first, whatever thing we're talking about, but we have enough people that I really don't see an external threat completely overthrowing it. I see more like integration of those external threats into whatever it is that we're working on. Sorry, I'm like all over the place right now. To comment on what Adam said about the whole Wix Weebly thing, or laughing at someone using Drupal, I'm very guilty of this myself. But yes, I do think there's a problem with laughing at people for other things that we use. Just because we think our tools are better and we like them better, that is another form of discrimination here, discriminating against what tool someone uses. Even if I laugh at someone for saying, oh, you're still using Internet Explorer, or just get Chrome, which years ago used to be get Firefox, and now I hear plenty of people talking trash about that. That's another way that we're making people feel excluded for something that, for whatever reason, is their choice, or for things that might not even be their choice. I think that can be just as bad a form of discrimination that our community needs to work on. We shouldn't be discriminating against someone for the technology that they use.
All right, thanks, Dave. So I'll leave. Does Adam want to say something else?
Yeah.
Go on.
There's a very important threat to WordPress that is largely glazed over to, in most parts, to a lack of understanding of the severity of it. And it's what I brought up to Matt at State of the Word. While WordPress admin is quite accessible, the products we ship with WordPress are not. And this isn't just a WordPress problem. This is a web development and design problem in general, that web accessibility is missing laws that mandate web accessibility. As of right now, there's, I think, 11 themes out of the 2,000 themes in the WordPress theme directory that are accessible. That means there are countries in the world, including several European countries, where if you are setting up a WordPress site and you need to sell a product with it or anything like that, you have basically no options. That's something that's going to become a huge problem for WordPress, because as people are setting up new sites, that's going to become a requirement. They're going to go and say, I need this to be fully accessible. WordPress is not. I have to go somewhere else. The other communities, Drupal, Joomla, everyone is actually pursuing this aggressively, and as up until this point, the WordPress community has not. Now, there is actual very serious work being done. It started at the Community Summit to change this, but it requires realignment of thinking around accessibility in the WordPress community, especially for theme and plugin developers. That means everyone needs to educate themselves on why this matters and start baking it in, because there is going to become a point very soon, as in like in 2015, where we're going to start seeing a drop in WordPress applications in certain countries. And those laws are spreading everywhere, and there's a good reason for it. So that's an actual real threat. And it's one that's kind of hiding in the background and won't appear until it's too late. I think
that was an excellent point, Morten, and I think it's something we can discuss in the new year. So I would like to wrap up this hangout.
Can I do a quick, not me, but a quick plug-in for something?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, of course you can.
It's not about me specifically. We were talking about internationalization languages, and I just want to do a quick reminder that right now, Triple J is running an Indiegogo campaign to spend 6 months doing full-time work on BuddyPress, BBPress, and GlotPress development. In the first 2 days, he got about 80% of the way there, and then in the past week, it's kind of slowed down to a crawl. I would absolutely recommend, if you use any of those tools, and I have a feeling, all of you do use those tools because you're on WordPress.org, go take a look at it, see if there's any way that you can help him, or just share it with your social networks. It would be, really sad to see it come to a crawl like that. And,
but he's going to still support it. Just awesome. He's going to prorate it based on. He'll do the work based on what he rates.
Right. I saw that, but I mean, any help that we can give.
Of course.
Yeah, I've been a little bit rude there. Are there anybody else that's got any want to any shout outs?
Hi, Mom.
Jonathan, after the hangout,
Pardon, what was that,
The
Bill?
Hangout, after the Hangout, just do some cleanup. I just put the questions up on the...
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'd like to thank the panel. You've been an excellent panel. I think we covered some interesting topics. We're having a break in December, and we'll be back in the new year. I hope our panel will reconsider coming back on again. I want to discuss accessibility in more depth in January. I'd like to wish the panel a great Thanksgiving, a great Christmas, and a New Year, and I sincerely wish that for all of you and your families.
And Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and Festivus.
Of course.
All for the rest of us.
Hey,
I know we had some slight technical problems getting started, but me and Bill, I think we have managed this one much more professionally.
I logged in a half hour early on the back side here, which I thought was good. It's a good way to come up when you do a WordPress, and Google Hangout. And then Jonathan and I played. But I do want to ask a couple of tech questions. One of the problems was different email addresses for different people. I mean,
We're still recording.
Yeah, we're still recording.
Okay.
I can turn off. Let's leave the recording on. But for everyone out there who wants to know how to do Google Plus Hangout better too, your basic email address. So you have to have an identified email address that you're going to come online with. Everybody agree with that?
I think they want to be off, Bill. I think they've had enough.
They can get off if they want to. Just get off. If you want to get off, drop off.
I think we need to discuss this off air, Bill.
Anybody wants to talk tech issues afterward about Google Plus Hangout, stay on.
Yeah, just for the record, I never got any invoice. I just got the link from David, put it in the thing. So
I sent an email out with the embedded link for everybody. If you go to timelinesofsuccess.com, you'll see it's live right now and streaming really well.
Yeah, I know it's frustrating.
could be my end, maybe.
It is frustrating, David, but we did do our best, and I tried to.
No, it worked out great. It worked out great. I'm glad you had the chat room in there.
That's why we had it. But thank you so much. You've all been great panelists, and I've really enjoyed the discussion.
I enjoyed being here.
Your contribution was really interesting, David. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
That's what my wife says. Don't patronize me.
No, I don't patronize. I always try and be polite. I do.
No,
I try my best.
You're fine. You're fine.
I enjoyed the chat, though. It was great. See you later, folks. I'm off.
So I'm going to stay on if anybody wants to stay on talk. Who's a Google Plus expert?
I have to take care of my kids.
Well, no, take off if you need to stop.
They're probably gnawing at the ropes that I.
That's why I use chain mail.
Exactly, chain.
Duct tape works too. Zip
Bye,
ties.
Right, I'm off then. Morten, I did email you to ask you if we could maybe have a quick chat sometime next week. Is that possible?
Sure.
Is he listening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. All right, thanks. You get back to me whatever time's suitable for you. It's like 20 minutes at the most. All right. Right. See you later, folks.
Okay. Out there real fast. Anybody's an expert in Google? G+. Some of the things that we had was, you just can't send an email address with an invitation. It's got to be like the right Gmail address. Mm-hmm. Anybody understand that?
Yeah, it's correct. Right.
Morten, you're a good example.
Yeah, no, you need to have to log into Hangout. You need to have an address associated with a Google Plus account.
Yes,
the problem. You as the organizer need to know what that is. But if you want to invite someone and you don't have their email address, you can click on the icon on the bottom right-hand corner. And it'll give you a pop-up that gives you all the links. No, sorry, I'm lying. If you want to invite someone and you don't know their email address or which one is linked, you can go to click the invite button, and then you get a bunch of links split out, and you can write an email address in there. But you can also just copy the URL.
That's the best way.
To someone else.
That's what you would do in
URL or anywhere else, just so that Just don't make that public, because then the whole world can join.
A follow-up on that question, you can copy it. So you really can't invite people until you go up on, you set up the Google Plus ahead of time, right? Mm-hmm. And you can pull the live feed link, the embed code to put in your websites.
Right.
Now you really can't invite the attendees, the active attendees, until you go ahead and open it up like 20, 30 minutes early?
No, so here's what I do. What I do is I create a Google Calendar event, and I add everybody to that Google Calendar event, and you can actually click, like while you're making the event, click add a video chat. So that video chat link will exist from whenever you make that event. So we don't have to wait until like 20 minutes before to get the video link to log in. But the one thing is, if somebody's using multiple Google accounts, they have to make sure they're clicking on it with the right Google account.
Or if yeah. Like in my case, my parent company, Silverline Productions, it's not connected to Google at all. I use I have an old Gmail account before Google Plus came around. So that's the issue, for me. Once you invite me to, if I get calendar invites to Silver Lining Productions, I got to download it and import it into iCal. I can't,
Oh, well, yeah, that could be an issue too. But the other issue is that Google does not give a good error if you're trying to connect to a Hangout with the wrong email account. It'll just, time out trying to connect to it.
Right.
Hey, say that again real fast. So when you schedule up a Google Hangout 3 or 4 days ahead of time, it's doing its countdown. How do you get that link for the actual attendees without opening it up? Can you open it up and then not do anything?
You can, yeah. If you open up that, I could open up the link a week in advance, and it just says you're the first person here.
Okay. So when you open that up, the administrator opens it up. You're not going to destroy it when you shut it down, right?
No.
That link, like I said, that link. If you create it as a calendar event, that link will be part of the calendar event.
Great. That's the way to do it. Then send the link out to everyone, and then also the embed code too, because now you go to YouTube and get the embed code, right?
I actually think that Hangouts are permanent because I have Hangouts, like the Hangout that we're in right now is just a video version of a regular Hangout, regular chat Hangout. And the chat Hangouts, they're persistent, so you can reopen them. It's kind of nuts.
Oh,
but
really?
If you're on an Android phone, you can actually go back in time. Like I can go and open an authored content that I did 2 years ago on my phone and reinitialize the event and start it again.
So what happens to YouTube?
The live component of that is not associated because the live component hooks up to YouTube, right?
Okay.
So once you make the live chain, then all of a sudden that gets dumped onto YouTube. And if you hit the live button again, or I think what happens is if you reopen the event, then it'll just say stop broadcasting, right? And that would create a new event, but you can technically open it early. The challenge is sometimes Google will break the chain. So if you open it 2 days in advance and you come back to it, Google might have changed the URL to it because Hangouts is a free product and they mess around with it all the time. So sometimes it just doesn't work the way you expect.
So a few days ahead of time, usually you're safe. But so you open up, you create an event, you schedule it. Now you open that up and you get the 2 URLs, the invitation, invite people. I might try that.
But I create the event. Like I said, the way I found has been the easiest is just creating the event as a calendar event, not as a Google Hangouts event. When you're in Google Calendar, when you click create an event and you invite people to that calendar event, so one will get notice in advance to put on a calendar. 2, you can it's just a button right in there when you're creating the event that says add a Hangout.
Okay.
But then do you get the ability to schedule it so that it's public on Google Plus, so you can actually invite people to watch from the outside?
Okay, I get what you're saying.
That's the value of doing it from Google Plus, right?
That's true. Okay, yeah, that I don't know. I'm gonna figure there has to be a way. That's the whole point of them integrating all of these, right? But yeah, it's true. I don't know off the top of my head.
Hey, follow-up question on that. For some reason, I don't know why, but I go into the toolbox. This is on banners. My banner's not working. Does anybody else have that problem?
Turn it off and back on.
What do you mean by turn it off and turn it back on?
You can
toolbox off and on?
Unplug and replug 100 times. It's a bug. It happens sometimes. Sometimes your banner will shut itself down and they have to restart it. Sometimes the Hangout.
Mine went away, yeah.
So if I close the toolbox up, I just close it up completely.
No, I think you have to close your window and start over. It's just one of the many persistent bugs in Google Hangouts that sometimes things don't work, and there's no rhyme or reason for why that's happening.
Okay, embedded code, we talked about that. The best way to get the embedded code out to everybody ahead of time, so I have my timeline of success people, I send it out to my email. Are you there? Any thoughts?
Adam just joined himself.
Watch this.
Watch this.
There are
Camera 2.
Adam, what are you doing?
He's joined with his phone.
Oh. He has the link, so he's on twice. I am too. If I go over here.
Yeah, let's do the crazy thing. Do you want me to do it as well? No.
Now that we have less than 10 people in here.
There we go.
But Will, I have a suggestion for you. It's actually something I discovered when I was playing around with this, and it's really neat. If you use the Q&A function is really cool because you can get people who are watching to send you questions.
Right.
Yeah, we want to do that.
Get questions, and it's so you can have like a whack load of questions already lined up when you start. The other thing is this new Showcase app. So when people talk about things that are happening, like I can go in and add a link to the Showcase app, and you can actually punch up a bunch of different links that then are persistent through the Hangout when people go to Google+. So
I'm on the administrator. It says the Q&A is disabled.
Yeah, you have to enable it before you start the event. So on the Google+ page, when you create the event, there will be underneath the video, there will be a little banner that gives you options. It will say Q&A, Showcase, and I forget the third one. You actually have to click on Q&A and say, I want to activate it for this event before you start. And that way it'll become an active thing that you can use. And then people can go in advance and actually add questions. So when you start Hangout, you'll have a list of questions already, and then you click on them as you're answering them, and then they'll be time coded into the video, so people can come back later, open up the video, and then click on a question, and then the time code will jump to wherever that question is answered.
And that might be an interesting little thing to do, like in the future episode, just have like 1 or 2 topics and then have an open Q&A.
Yeah, I agree. We'll do that. I work with Jonathan. He actually came to me to do word for podcasts.
Sorry, I'm gonna add this.
One of your microphones there.
Sorry, I'm just trying to play around.
Yeah, I did too. I know.
But you may want to do anything next month, anytime, instead of January.
I might be available. I might be traveling. I don't know. Who knows what's going on?
I'm going to be in Southern Cal.
Festivus, so.
I'll be in Southern Cal, but it doesn't make a difference where I am. I got my MacBook Pro.
It depends on the time.
We got WordCamp Orlando coming up, so.
Yeah, and I just booked my flight for that, so I'm kidding. I didn't.
Well, if you do, then we'll figure something out. Yeah. I mean, you can all come. You're all welcome, obviously.
I wish
you have 2 whole weeks. Come on.
Hey, a couple seconds.
$56. I just looked at the flights.
If you don't mind, what we've done is on Jonathan and my show, Jonathan is like the programmer / coder, whatever. He's not full coder, but I'm like the business guy trying to figure out how to use WordPress. That's sort of our show in WP-Tonic. We started another Hangout designed toward, not a Hangout, but another meetup designed towards the business entrepreneurs who want to employ WordPress for their business.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to develop that. How do you teach them? How much do they need to know? What does an entrepreneur need to know to have a successful online?
Two answers I always tell my students. Back to the class. My students are all adults, technically over 18, but usually median age 50, let's say 40, maybe 40s. And that said, I always do 2 things. One, they need to know what their goal is. What's the end result that they want? And then when I talk to them, I don't want to talk down to anybody. I always say, you don't need to know that right now, meaning they don't need to know about an e-commerce solution if they have no idea how to set up just, install a theme.
A blog
site.
Sell products in general.
Right. So it just depends on what they're trying to do. So first and foremost, what do they want to get to? And then learn the steps for that specific. And that's the thing. I have 15 students per class, and everyone is uniquely different. So, they don't need to know right now. The steps are just determined based on each person's need.
I give a regular lecture on your minimum viable product with WordPress, which basically boils down to you have a lot of other things to focus on with your business than building your website, unless it's a website technology that you're building, in which case you wouldn't be in my class. But I mean, if you're saying, I want to start my business selling custom T-shirts or something, you should be focused on those T-shirts, not on building your website. And the main things I teach are how to utilize existing tools to get where you need to go. Right. Don't build your own e-commerce solution. Use WooCommerce, Exchange. Downloads, all those.
I just messed with Exchange for the first time yesterday, just for the heck of it, and wow, it was really cool.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. Exchange by iThemes.
iThemes.
Okay. So I was going to say, if you're talking to any business owner who's not in the business of making websites, and they are talking about making their own website, the answer is hire a professional.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that if you're talking to a business owner about writing a contract for themselves,
hire a lawyer.
You say hire a lawyer, or if they have dental problems, you don't take a hammer and chisel.
Right. Do what you do best at. Outsource the rest. Easier said than done, but that's the right way to say it. Exactly. I do that all the time.
It's actually a good business practice too, because the time it'll take you to actually educate yourself and build a proper website is enormous, and all that time is time you didn't spend doing whatever your business is doing.
And I ask every one of my students, the first day, we do this go around, introduce yourself, why are you here, what's your experience with blogging or platform, or WordPress, etc. And at least half of them have had an experience to our community. They've hired a developer off of Craigslist or off of some other, usually Craigslist, and the developer, because they're, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm not the oldest one here, but David might be my age, but these young developers, these people, part-timers, okay, these part-timers charge, $25 an hour. They get a better deal. Or they say they'll do a whole site e-commerce for $750, and then they drop the ball, and so they want to know more. I mean, so half of what I educate people is knowing the questions to ask. And when they do talk to a developer, what do they need to know? And they know how to protect themselves, not to give all the money up front, to have expectations set appropriately, etc. I mean, it's also that. I mean, you're right, Morten. It's a matter of outsource it, but be knowledgeable what you're hiring, who you're hiring.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation about educating our community about when you are at a level where selling your services is appropriate.
Right.
And for the most part, that has to do, again, with what I was saying earlier. You have to be exposed to the real world of web design, which doesn't appear inside the WordPress community at all. Like, we don't touch them at all. And there's this enormous community of web designers outside of WordPress that are on a level that is astronomically much higher than the regular WordPress developer. And that's because people who work with WordPress learn to do things with WordPress. They learned everything from WordPress, and they've never really touched what's outside.
Right.
And there are lots of issues here: how to run a business, how to deal with clients, legal issues. I mean, all this e-commerce stuff. I'm just going to tell you, running e-commerce on WordPress is a very, very risky proposition, because there are legal issues that come in with that, like privacy issues, not about credit cards, which everyone's concerned about, but about customer data.
Right.
Whether or not you're allowed to store that data on your server. In most cases, you're not. So there are a lot of pieces that go into this puzzle that are tricky, because you need a lot of exposure to the real world to know that they even exist. Okay. I'm called Dr. Doom, by the way.
So what I'm trying to do is...
I should change my title.
Hey, if you don't mind, just a couple, maybe 10 minutes of this sort of technical evolution. I'm trying to create something. I think I could go out to the business community. I'm 57, baby boomer.
I hope people are still watching, by the way.
Broad background.
After the show.
Yeah, this is important. This is a tech show. This is more the business side of WordPress, and I'm the business guy. So I think I could go out and talk to the business person and relate to them how to implement a developer WordPress person, how to build a site, be successful. But I think they still need to understand the basics of blogging, things of that nature. Or even a real estate agent, a basic WordPress site where they blog every day is going to help them as a real estate agent.
Oh, yeah.
But then to take it to the next level where they have a almost every real estate agent has to have a web page.
Right, but I think
a real estate agent needs to have a photo somewhere on their website of themselves.
A current photo.
With an alt tag that says real estate agent in, and then insert city here. Or name of their own name, and then real estate agent in, because then their face will show up in Google image searches when people search for real estate agents in their local community. No one does that, but that's the kind of stuff they need to do.
Right.
So just real estate.
And have a photo. If you're a male real estate agent and you don't have any hair anymore, have a new photo taken. If you're a woman and you have a medium hairdo. Sorry.
But no, that's an example of a lot of different people.
Shaven as your picture.
Because,
oh, wait, what?
So, I think you're as clean shaven as your picture in front.
Total caught out on that. Oh, it's harsh. But
Jonathan just
I
called
was
me
a
on my
professional
cell phone.
photographer for 20 years. It's like that's one of my pet peeves on real estate agents specifically. So anyway.
No, there's a lot out there, and they implement. They use the website for their searches, and real estate really hasn't adapted real well to the web. Believe it or not, even though they do searches, they're still doing it the traditional way. I mean, people are still using that relationship to buy real estate for the most part.
Yeah, I think some of that has to do with how MLS information is shared too, because the actual real estate data is usually extremely proprietary. Like in Canada, you can't actually build a real estate website on WordPress. It's just not possible because
there are a few plugins,
there are no decent APIs that allow you to hook the real estate information in. So you could build a support site for your real estate, but someone has cornered that market with licenses. So
I think
there's a lot of complications that come with the web that go far beyond just the issues that we talk about.
I think something like real estate might be not necessarily the best example for can it be done. I'm not talking about technology. We tend to look at things in a technological manner. Can we not do this because of whatever technological things are going on? But real estate agents, I think, have the word-of-mouth business cornered, not because they're hard to find on Google, but you're talking about something that's like probably the biggest purchase anyone's going to make in their entire life. So it's just human nature thing. We're going to want to, hear what our best friend who, just bought a house says about the person they worked with, not just find somebody online. That's not always the case. We can't always make those connections, but that level of trust, is a lot more important than who shows up at the top of Google for a lot of people.
Well, that's true, but a real estate agent could benefit from a good website, and the reality is you would be able to build great websites using WordPress for real estate agents that the agents will be able to use in a better way. But what I'm saying is, in many disciplines, there are technical factors that prevent applications like WordPress from even making an entry. But that actually brings up that larger question about what is it the end user is supposed to know, right? The site owner. Are they supposed to know WordPress, or are they supposed to know how they can use the web to market their business? My answer is always the way your business syncs, then there's something wrong about your business plan, because you're never selling WordPress. WordPress sells itself. You're selling either something you are using WordPress to sell something, or you are selling some sort of extension to WordPress or service around WordPress, or you are selling the skill of building something with WordPress, all of which should be able to be done even if you take WordPress out of the equation. And training people to become solely reliant on WordPress and not understanding that this is just a tool you use to access the internet and provide information to other people might be risky, especially for a business owner, because you lock them into some sort of technology that 10 years from now may be supplanted by something much better.
Hey, quick question to follow up. You all know John Lee Dumas, right? What he's done the last 2 years. Follow that. I mean, he's taken podcasting and used that to drive into his business, and his business is Webinar and Fire, and then he started teaching how to do podcasting. What do you think of that model?
Well, not thinking about his model specifically, but I noticed that a lot of the most popular and biggest content marketing of any sort, whether it's podcast, videocast, websites, blogging, anything, seems like a lot of people making the most money and having the biggest names are the people who do courses on how to do that thing.
Correct. It is. And
everybody wants to be that next person, and that's the mistake. I'm a firm believer of put out good, relevant content to whatever you happen to do, and you get that. But people want to be the next John Lee Dumas. People want to be the next Pat Flynn. People want to be.
John Lee Dumas is not the best teacher of podcasting.
And people want to be the next Cliff Ravenscraft, or there's Jamie Tardy, but and I follow them, and I know all of them.
There's a lot of room in that field. That's huge. It's expanding.
Right. Because there's different. I don't listen to John Lee's anymore it got tired of it. It was a little too especially his webinars. It got a little too salesy. I like him. He's a nice guy. I met him at NMX, but
Jonathan just came back on.
Yeah, it's just a matter of be the best person you can be and what you want to do, and then you'll find a following. You'll find your audience and move on.
Yeah, try to not do what other people are doing, try to do something else. I mean, I used to work in the music industry, and the music industry works on a really basic principle, which is first, best, or different. Ideally, you want all three, but you need to have at least one of them. So if you see someone succeeding at something, competing with them on the exact same thing is not necessarily a good idea, and it's not a good business plan, because now you're not introducing anything new, you're not being different, and you're not being the best at it because they've already been doing it for a while. To get in, you need to come up with something else, or maybe take what they've done and improve on it in some way, or make it different. So
make it different. Yeah, I mean, because my old philosophy was, there's 4 gas stations, there's a gas station every corner, kind of thing. So it doesn't, just because it's being done doesn't mean it can't be done again, but it has to be somehow different, and in different voices, especially podcasting. The key, I think, is different. Like a good friend of mine has a podcast for WordPress. He's been around for much longer than I have. His audience is much larger. But he's the one who pushed me to start mine. Do we compete? Do we talk about similar stuff? Sure, but we have different voices. I have a shorter format. It's just different. I mean, he and I are still good friends, and actually, I have his laptop. He works for Automatic now.
So the question is the podcast your business?
No. It's just a way for me to share
it back. Business in some way, right?
Yes, totally, exactly.
That's the other part of this is a lot of people come in and think that either making a podcast or writing a blog or something is money. Unless you're like John Chow, that's simply not going to happen.
Right.
You're using all of these tools in some way to market something else. Either giving yourself exposure in the community so people come to you for when they need things, or just a product or doing something else. And it's important to realize that these things are all part of a larger strategy, and you're never actually selling the thing itself. When you start trying to monetize your podcast or monetize your blog, you're now saying, my content is so good, people should pay for it, right? If you put ads anywhere, you're actually making your viewers or anyone pay for access to your content, which means that needs to be really good content for that to actually work, right?
Well, you just said that John Lee Dumas' content's not great, is it? I mean, it's just interviewing entrepreneurs, right?
Well, that's the other thing. That's not how he's making more money now on Paradise, on Podcasters Paradise.
He's got Webinar Paradise, but he also makes a good chunk of change through his
sponsors,
affiliate and sponsors.
Yes,
because he has a large a group of followers.
Right, and he hustled, and he was in real estate, commercial real estate stuff. But Morten, you're right. I mean, it comes down to my podcast is not my business. I pull in, I break even. I make a little bit of money on some affiliates. I'm honest about it, as we need to be through the FCC, all that stuff. But it's not my business. I don't want it to be my business at the moment. It brings people to me as a community liaison, if you will, or as the evangelist for WordPress in my area. And then, do I get business from it? Yes. Is it my business? No. And that's why I love you, Morten.
And it can be your business, but you have to then realize that now you're a TV station.
Right.
And now you're doing 90% of your work is marketing. So
that's
media is in trouble because of that, because they're trying to monetize content.
I want to hug everybody.
No, but for those businesses to produce, for the most part, to produce good content, they have to have a revenue stream to afford that. There's a podcast called Startup right now. Anybody? I'm sure you've all seen that.
NPR.
NPR guy, yeah, who's starting up his own for-profit.
Yep. I haven't listened to any of it, but I've heard a lot about it.
It's good. I caught the first one, and it's really good. So anyway, that's kind of nice after the discussion. That's what we're trying to do is how to, in the next WordPress meetup, is how to transition that business person. I think there's really, what the next evolution is, John Lee Dumas, of course, hit everybody across the web worldwide. I think in every city, every town, with traditional marketing being like postcards or you just hand out, with the services that you provide, that each town will have its own little evolution of what's next, in WordPress.
Absolutely. A few of us locally have been looking to move into some new projects that we examined. We were looking at our competitors in the space and comparing, contrasting all the features that they had. And this kind of goes back to that gas station thing of 4 in 1 corner. I'm not saying don't be good at what you do, but you don't necessarily have to have a sea change of what you do compared to your competitor if your market is a different geographical market, say. By that I mean there are several companies that do some of the things that we do and some of the things that we want to do, but if I go out to people around town or even just to our local user group and say, hey, have you even heard of these companies? The vast majority of them say no. That's my market. I mean, it's not like a cynical like, oh, I'm just going to copy this person's success, but I can build off of what somebody else has already done and know that I have people who, if they were to choose one of these companies, would go with our company simply for visibility locally.
Right. One thing to add to that is an old theory was you could go to a big city, find out what niche is working there really well, people making money, and take that niche and bring it to a new city. That's an old theory. It still probably works in some elements because people aren't as connected as like we are in this group.
Right.
And just because you're, John Lee Dumas, we all know who he is. Many people don't.
No,
I
most
did
people
a
don't.
minute ago.
He doesn't have that. If you look at it in his organizations, I think he's got about 1,500 in his WordPress site, and his webinar on Fire, he's got about 150. So, but then he's got a big list. So anyway, business owners want to know how to
leave.
Yeah, I got to go too.
Duck out too.
Hey, thanks. It was good. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome back.
Have a good one. See you guys.
Do you want to say anything from the coffee shop? What kind of coffee to get before we shut down?
Can't hear you, and I'm out. I got to go.
Good. Thanks, Adam.
You're muted. Sorry.
Can't hear you, Jonathan. Why can't we hear Jonathan? Jonathan, you're still on. You should. Everything looks good from this side, but you're muted as we finish up. Can't hear you, Jonathan. There. Okay. You're unmuted there, so she'll be able to hear you. It must be something to do with your mic. You probably, if you go in the left-hand corner, you've got the tools to set up underneath. You go to System Preferences, and you're probably still on your headset speaker under Sounds. So you got to go to Input, and you're probably showing on. You got to go to internal mic or external.
Yeah, Dave, does that work?
Yeah, that's work. Was that the external mic?
Yeah, it got stuck. Can you hear me now?
I just realized something. Yeah. I've had my I may have had my Logitech input on, my Logitech mic. Interesting. Now I've got my codec USB on. I wonder if there's a difference in sound.
Well, what do you think, Bill?
Yeah, they were still live, but we talked a little bit afterward about some recommendations. There's some good recommendations on the Google Plus Hangout.
Yeah, sure.
And basically, there's a way you go up ahead of time, and you send out the link to come on instead of inviting people. I know now how we can actually get the invitation link and get that out ahead of time in an email to people.
Yeah, I think that's the only area that needs to be tidied up.
Yeah. And when we invite people, that's the way to do it. We did the right thing, the Google Plus scheduling, like I did on mine. That was the way to do that, the Google Plus scheduling. And then open up an event, and then go in, and there's a way to capture the invitation link on it. So I'm going to play around with that. Now, when you go live, you can go live and then shut it down. And you can keep this event open that we have now, and you go live and then shut it back down. Kind of interesting. So a lot of good tech stuff after. Your guys' show was real good. Your guys definitely is more oriented towards the coder, the WordPress ethics guy. Not that interim business guy. By the way, I've had a lot of good comments that when you and I do a show, it works well. Thank you. Oh, I got coffee. That's a good deal. Yeah, you don't get that. Carried to you.
No, I don't get any delivery, do I?
That's nice. That's nice. Where are you at? Were you down in Carson City?
Yeah, I've got to have my coffee.
It's one of those places close to the Capitol on the front street?
I have to go to the south side because it's the only one that has Google Fiber.
Oh, they have Google Fiber?
In one of them.
What's the name of the place you're at?
It's Starbucks, but it's on the south side of Carson.
Starbucks. Wow. It looks nice. It's got a nice little picture up there. It doesn't look like a real Starbucks. It must be a bigger Starbucks.
All the rest of them have got AT&T and it's useless.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know which. How's my sound? How do I sound?
It sounds quite good.
Yeah,
I'm just using my normal mic.
I'm Logitech now. How's it sound?
So what was your impressions of the show?
Well, we're still on. This is good. It was excellent. It's getting better and better. The quality of people you have on, you can't beat. They are really the connected people in WordPress across the country. I mean, everyone that's on that WordPress, we all know them all. They know us. So that's a really broad-based community. Now, if you go log on to timelinesofsuccess.com,
Rightio.
you should have this up on WP-Tonic, just like I do on Timelines. Everyone, if you embed that on the front, so people can find it really easy.
I'm trying to get my website up.
I'm going to try to show it. I'm going to try this. Before we finish up, I'm playing around with this edition. Oops, are you still there, Jonathan? I think you cut out. Well, Jonathan, come back on. Jonathan just fell off. I'm going to invite him back on.
Oh, back again.
Yeah, I was about to invite you back on. I'm going to send you an invitation anyway. See what happens.
Sorry about that.
So anyway, I'm going to try to bring up my page right now.
Yeah. All right.
So can I do it on this one?
I just want to go and get a quick coffee. I'll be 2 minutes.
Go get coffee. I'll bring up this page while you get a coffee. Let's play around. Okay, we're going to do a screen share, folks. And as you can see, that's not what I want to screen share. So I need to pull something up. Screen share. See, new window. I'm going to go up to, there it is. We're going to go to Timelines. Here's Timelines of Success. We have embedded the live feed. We did this last night. I was at I put on a live there was a big meeting last night at the Laietta Casino, and I streamed it live, and I put it on everybody's website so they could watch it. So this is the streaming live you'll see right now. Let me pull this screen up. Interesting, it's talking back. So I'm screen sharing. So I'm screen sharing right now. You should see this in the. You should see this kind of interesting though, because I am having to listen to myself on delay on this screenshot. So we're waiting for Jonathan right now, and we're doing a screen share. We'll have to see what he sees. So what do I have over here on the? Yeah, I can see the screen share. I've got 2 computers going. We've got the admin computer going, which is a WP-Tonic admin site for the Google Plus Hangout, which is oriented towards the you can see it going back and forth. So Jonathan is picking up noise from where he's at. He's in the Starbucks down in Carson City. Turn my sound off here. I just turned my sound off so I don't have to listen to myself. But this is a really interesting element. If you configure, this is free streaming basically that you can do anywhere in any classroom. I've always thought this could be applied to different places. It's really interesting. It's bouncing back and forth with Jonathan and mine. That means I can go on here. I can lock in this. So I just lock in mine so we're not seeing Jonathan. So when Jonathan comes back, so that's. Let's see if I can make this bigger on here. So I'm expanding this to get bigger, much bigger, so we can get a feel of what this looks like. So right there is the live. You're seeing it live. I don't know why it's going back. There's Bill. So if I can pull this into here. Give powers to this person to present to everyone. So right now, we are presenting to everyone. So how do we make this bigger? Go here. So this is a, this is what it looks like, but
all right, I'm
Jonathan,
back.
you're back.
Yeah, got my coffee now.
Jonathan, you're back. Hey, what's happening? It's going back and forth between your site and the other site. So I'm going to take screen share off. Take that down.
I think I think having 8 guests is too many.
I thought it was good. I actually thought it was good. I thought you handled it real well for 8 guests. I thought they had good input. What's really neat, though, is you can broadcast live like we're doing now, but you can also shut it down and keep it going without being live. So when we're done, we want to stop. We're presenting to everyone right now, so let's stay online. Let's say goodbye to everybody. And
All right.
we're going to hang up. And this is good education. For those who want to learn Google Plus Hangout, they see sort of what we're doing, see my mess in the background. And I'm going to try to stop. You're presenting. Okay, I'm actually presenting on my other one right now, so I'm going to stop that. I was playing around with the tools, so I stopped presenting. And what we want to do is we want to stay online but stop the live. So I'm going to hit the live. How do you think we stop the live and still stay talking?
Well, I don't know.
Let me go settings here. Cancel. How do we stop the live? Let me try it from over here to the admin side. Here we go. Stay online. I think this is going to work. Stop the live. We don't stop broadcasting. We might lose each other. I'm going to call you back on another Google Plus Hangout in a second. I'll call you back in about 5 minutes if we go offline. Anyway, it was a wonderful time.